Life is full of choices, and some of them, perhaps most of them, are not trivial. They determine the very structure of who you become. Every day, you stand at a crossroads between what's easy and what's difficult, between what gives you comfort now and what gives you meaning later. And here's the thing, the easy path always looks appealing at first glance. It promises you rest without effort, reward without responsibility, and pleasure without sacrifice. But it's a lie. It's a trap. The easy path doesn't make life easier, it makes you weaker. It erodes your character, your courage, and your capacity to bear the weight of existence. If you take the easy way out often enough, you start to become resentful toward yourself, toward others, toward life itself. Because deep down, you've betrayed something essential within you, the part that's capable of greatness, the part that's meant to shoulder responsibility and bring order out of chaos. Now contrast that with the hard path. The hard path is terrifying. It's demanding. It's full of struggle, uncertainty, and pain. But it's also where growth occurs. It's where you find out what you're made of. When you voluntarily face what you fear, when you decide to carry your burden willingly, you don't just make life harder, you make yourself stronger. People often ask, why would I choose the difficult thing when the easy one is right there? And the answer is because the difficult thing is what gives your life meaning. Meaning isn't found in the pursuit of comfort, it's found in the confrontation with suffering. Meaning emerges when you stand up straight with your shoulders back and face the chaos head on, saying, I will do what must be done even if it costs me. You have to understand this. Responsibility is what rescues you from despair. When you take on something difficult, when you aim at something high and noble, it orders your soul. It forces you to grow. You might fail. Of course you might, but even in failure, you're better than the person who never tried. Because you've faced the dragon, and even if you've been burned, you've learned how to fight. And maybe, just maybe, you've made the world a little better too. Because when one person chooses the hard path, others notice. They're inspired. They see that courage is possible, that discipline is real, that meaning can be found even in suffering. And that's how you change the world, not through grand speeches or political movements, but through individual transformation. So choose the hard path. Pick up the heaviest load you can carry and carry it with dignity. Sacrifice who you are for who you could be. Because the person you could be, that person is strong enough, wise enough, and good enough to confront the tragedy of life without bitterness. And that's no small thing. So stand up, speak the truth, do what's difficult, because it's the hard path, not the easy one, that leads to life worth living. The easy path weakens you, the hard path strengthens you. It's a simple statement, but it contains within it a profound truth about the nature of human existence. Life at its core is not designed to be easy. It's not structured as a playground. It's structured as a test, a challenge, a crucible. And every time you choose ease over effort, every time you sidestep responsibility or avoid discomfort, you make a trade, you exchange potential strength for temporary relief. And the danger in that trade is that you don't notice the cost until it's too late. When you continually choose the easy path, you start to erode your own foundation. You become fragile, anxious, resentful, and dependent because what you avoid doesn't disappear. It waits. The challenges you run from accumulate quietly in the background, growing larger, more complex, more oppressive. You may think you've escaped them, but all you've done is delay the confrontation. And when they finally return, as they always do, you'll be less prepared to face them because you've weakened yourself by refusing to engage. The easy path offers you a false sense of peace. It whispers that comfort is the goal, that pleasure is enough, that responsibility is optional. But life punishes that belief harshly. Because comfort, when pursued blindly, leads to stagnation. It's like staying in bed long after the alarm has rung. You think you're resting, but you're really decaying. You're missing the opportunities that demand effort, the very ones that can make you stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Discipline, sacrifice, endurance, these are the tools that forge strength. They're the price of becoming someone capable of carrying the weight of existence. And that weight is heavy. It involves suffering, uncertainty, loss, and failure. But when you shoulder that load voluntarily, something remarkable happens. You begin to grow into it. You become the kind of person who can handle it. You adapt. You develop resilience, courage, and competence. These things don't come from comfort. They come from challenge. Think about the gym as a metaphor. If you only lift weights that are easy, your muscles don't grow. They atrophy. The very process that builds strength requires stress, resistance, and controlled struggle. The discomfort is the mechanism through which development occurs. And it's exactly the same psychologically, morally, and spiritually. If you never confront what's hard, you never discover what you're capable of, you remain soft, untested, dependent on circumstances being kind. And the world isn't kind. That's why the easy path is so dangerous. It tempts you with immediate gratification at the cost of long-term strength. You think you're escaping suffering, but you're really multiplying it. You're just moving it into the future where it grows teeth. The harder path, in contrast, demands suffering now, but that suffering transforms you. It turns chaos into order, ignorance into knowledge, fear into courage. It teaches you how to stand on your own 2 feet in a world that's indifferent to your comfort. When you choose the hard path, you train your soul in fortitude. You learn that you can bear more than you thought you could. You learn that fear is not fatal, that failure is not the end, that pain is not the enemy. You discover the parts of yourself that are indestructible. That's where true confidence comes from. Not from ease, not from luxury, but from tested strength. The person who's been through the fire and endured can face the next challenge without flinching. The person who's always avoided the fire can't even approach it. The easy path breeds dependency. It convinces you that you need constant reassurance, comfort, and validation. You start to outsource your resilience to others, to systems, to conveniences. You lose touch with the fundamental truth that meaning is born out of struggle. When everything is made simple for you, you lose the ability to create meaning for yourself. You become passive, waiting for life to deliver satisfaction to your doorstep. But life doesn't work that way. It demands participation. It demands effort. Strength is built in the voluntary confrontation with difficulty. It's choosing to do what's necessary instead of what's expedient. It's cleaning your room when you'd rather sleep. It's speaking the truth when lying would be easier. It's taking responsibility when blame would feel safer. Each of those small choices is a rejection of weakness. Each of them builds a kind of inner architecture, a moral backbone that keeps you upright when the storms come. And the storms always come. Life is not a straight road. It's filled with tragedy, suffering, and betrayal. If you haven't prepared for that by choosing the hard path early and often, you'll crumble under the weight of it. But if you've cultivated strength through voluntary struggle, then even in the darkest moments, you'll have the internal resources to endure. You'll have something solid to stand on, your own character. It's easy to envy people who seem to have smooth lives, who appear untouched by difficulty. But that smoothness can be deceptive. It can conceal fragility. The person who's never faced real adversity may look composed, but they're like glass, one strike and they shatter. The person who's wrestled with chaos, who's chosen responsibility over comfort again and again, they're more like tempered steel. They bend, but they don't break. They have depth. They have substance. Choosing the hard path doesn't mean seeking misery for its own sake. It means recognizing that there is no real growth without sacrifice. It means accepting that meaning comes with a cost. When you do what's hard, when you confront your weaknesses, discipline your impulses, pursue excellence, you're paying that cost willingly. You're transforming suffering into strength. You're engaging in the oldest and most noble of human endeavors to turn the chaos of existence into order through effort. That effort is what gives you dignity. It's what makes you capable of standing upright in the face of tragedy. And paradoxically, the harder your life becomes, the more meaningful it can be if you meet it properly. Because every burden is an opportunity to become something greater. Every obstacle is an invitation to grow. The easy path offers you comfort, but the hard path offers you transformation. When you take the hard path, you're making a pact with yourself. You're saying, I'm not going to be the kind of person who avoids the truth. I'm not going to shrink away from what's required. I'm going to confront reality, whatever it demands of me. That decision shapes your identity at the deepest level. It turns you from a passive observer into an active participant in your own life. You start to see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to refine yourself. The easy path numbs you. It offers distraction, entertainment, and the illusion of control. But those are poor substitutes for real vitality. The hard path, on the other hand, awakens you. It makes you alert, conscious, alive, because when everything's on the line, you pay attention. You become present. You stop drifting. The weight of difficulty anchors you to reality, and from that contact with reality, strength emerges. When you look back on your life, it won't be the moments of ease that define you. It will be the moments of struggle, the times when you were tested, when you didn't know if you could go on, but did anyway. Those moments shape your character. They reveal your potential. They are the proof that the easy path was never meant for you, because you were made for something greater than comfort. You were made to bear the load, to transform pain into wisdom, and to become strong enough to face the world as it is. Meaning is found in confronting suffering, not avoiding it. This is one of the most difficult truths for people to accept, because everything in us wants to recoil from pain, from uncertainty, from loss. We want to feel secure, to be comfortable, to be at ease. But life doesn't work that way. Suffering is built into the structure of existence itself. You can't escape it, no matter how much you try to shield yourself. What you can do, though, is confront it voluntarily, and in that confrontation you discover meaning. Avoiding suffering seems rational at first glance. Who wouldn't want to stay away from pain? But the more you avoid it, the more it grows. You start to live in fear of it. You begin to organize your life around comfort instead of truth. You trade growth for safety, and little by little, you shrink. The avoidance of suffering doesn't protect you. It weakens you. It makes you fragile. And a fragile person can't withstand the inevitable tragedies that life brings. When you choose to face suffering head on, something profound happens. You begin to transform it. You turn chaos into order, fear into courage, despair into responsibility. It's as though meaning itself arises from that voluntary confrontation. It's not that suffering disappears. It doesn't, but it becomes something else. It becomes purposeful. It becomes a test, a teacher, a forge. The fire that once threatened to consume you becomes the same fire that purifies you. Every great story humanity has ever told echoes this truth. The hero never finds meaning by avoiding danger. They find it by stepping into the unknown, by facing the dragon, by enduring hardship and sacrifice. It's the oldest story there is, and it's repeated endlessly because it mirrors the structure of reality. Meaning doesn't come from happiness or pleasure. It comes from the weight you choose to carry, the sacrifices you make willingly, and the courage to face what you fear most. People often confuse comfort with meaning. They think if they can just eliminate discomfort, if they can make life smooth and predictable, they'll be happy. But happiness is shallow when it's detached from purpose. It fades the moment suffering returns, which it always does. Meaning, on the other hand, can coexist with suffering. It gives you a reason to endure it. It gives the pain a context, a direction. Without meaning, suffering is just chaos. With meaning, it becomes redemption. To confront suffering means to look reality in the face without turning away. It means admitting that life is hard, that people die, that injustice exists, that failure is inevitable, and yet choosing to move forward anyway. It's to say, yes, the world is broken, and I will still act as though my actions matter. That's the essence of meaning, the willingness to take responsibility despite the tragedy, the refusal to give in to despair, the conscious decision to make something good out of what's terrible. It's in those moments, when everything seems impossible, when the weight feels unbearable, that you encounter the deepest sense of meaning. You find it in sacrifice, in perseverance, in love that endures through suffering. You find it when you hold your family together in hard times, when you keep your word, even when it costs you, when you tell the truth when it would be easier to lie. Those are the moments that give life substance. They transform suffering into something sacred. Avoiding suffering doesn't just rob you of strength, it robs you of significance. You might manage to protect yourself from pain temporarily, but you also shield yourself from purpose. Because meaning and suffering are intertwined. They are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. Every act of love carries the possibility of loss. Every pursuit of excellence carries the risk of failure. Every attempt to do good invites struggle. That's the price, and it's worth paying. If you refuse that price, you end up lost. You drift, aimless, disconnected from anything that justifies the difficulty of living. You might distract yourself with pleasure, with comfort, with entertainment, but deep down, you know something is missing. That sense of emptiness is the absence of meaning, and it's not cured by ease. It's cured by facing what you fear and doing what is necessary despite it. Confronting suffering doesn't mean enjoying it or seeking it unnecessarily. It means accepting it as part of the human condition and responding to it with courage. It means choosing to bear your burden rather than cursing the fact that you have one. And the astonishing thing is that when you do this, when you lift your cross voluntarily, you begin to feel stronger, more integrated, more alive. You begin to see that the very act of carrying the weight gives your life depth and direction. Meaning emerges from the battle, not the escape. It arises when you choose responsibility over comfort, truth over convenience, perseverance over despair. It's forged in the fire of suffering you refuse to run from, and the more you face it, the deeper your sense of purpose becomes. Because it's only in confronting the darkness that you can see the light clearly. It's only in facing suffering directly that you learn what it means to truly live. Responsibility gives life structure and purpose. Without it, everything falls apart, internally and externally. When you remove responsibility from a person's life, you remove the very framework that holds meaning together. People often think freedom is about doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but that kind of freedom quickly collapses into chaos. True freedom isn't the absence of responsibility, it's the mastery that comes from bearing it. Responsibility gives your actions weight. It connects your present to your future. It orders your life in a way that transforms aimlessness into direction and despair into meaning. When you take responsibility, you stop drifting. You begin to understand that what you do matters, that your choices ripple outward beyond yourself. It's an antidote to nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, because responsibility insists that something does matter and that something begins with you. It's easy to blame the world, to point fingers, to say that the system is broken or that other people are at fault. It's much harder to look in the mirror and say, what can I do to make this better? That's where responsibility begins, with the individual willing to carry the load instead of waiting for someone else to do it. Responsibility gives you a reason to get up in the morning. When you have something to care for, something to build, something to protect, your life takes on structure. It stops being arbitrary. It becomes a story with direction and consequence. That's why people who dedicate themselves to meaningful responsibility, raising a child, caring for others, pursuing excellence in their work, often find themselves more stable, even in the midst of suffering. They have something to aim at, something to serve. Without that, life becomes scattered, chaotic, and unbearable. The act of taking responsibility also demands sacrifice. You have to give up certain freedoms to gain something greater. You can't have everything, you must choose what's worth bearing. And that's what makes responsibility meaningful. It requires commitment. It forces you to define what truly matters to you and to organize your behavior around that goal. It's the discipline of choosing the good over the easy, the necessary over the convenient. And when you make that choice repeatedly, your life begins to take shape. You become someone capable of acting with purpose rather than reacting out of impulse. There's a reason ancient wisdom traditions emphasize duty, discipline, and service. These aren't arbitrary moral rules, they're psychological necessities. When you take on responsibility, you align yourself with something beyond your own comfort. You become part of a greater order, something that stretches beyond the narrow boundaries of self-interest. And paradoxically, it's when you serve something higher than yourself that you discover who you truly are. Responsibility calls out your potential. It says, you could be more than this. You could do more than this. You could stand up and carry the weight of the world, at least a little piece of it. When you reject responsibility, you don't escape the burden of life, you just carry it unconsciously. You become resentful, aimless, and lost. You start to feel that life has no meaning, that nothing you do matters. But that feeling is not a reflection of life's emptiness, it's a reflection of your refusal to engage with it. The weight doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It just crushes you slowly in ways you don't notice until you're broken. Responsibility, on the other hand, is what allows you to lift that weight and transform it into strength. Taking responsibility also connects you to others in a meaningful way. Relationships thrive on mutual responsibility. Families survive because someone is willing to care, to sacrifice, to put others before themselves. Communities function when individuals act responsibly within them. When people neglect this, society begins to decay. The moment everyone decides that responsibility is someone else's problem, chaos follows. Responsibility isn't just personal, it's the glue that holds civilization together. And yet the call to responsibility is deeply personal. It begins in the smallest possible way, with cleaning your room, telling the truth, fulfilling your obligations, doing your work properly even when no one is watching. These are simple acts, but they accumulate, they build competence and integrity. They prove to you that you are capable of order. And once you've established order in the small things, you can begin to take on larger ones. The world changes because individuals decide to bear their share of its weight. When you take responsibility, life stops being a series of random events. It becomes a narrative, a story that you're actively writing. You become the protagonist instead of the victim. And as you bear more responsibility, your character deepens. You learn resilience, patience, and humility. You learn that meaning is not something you find, it's something you build through disciplined action. You start to see that the structure responsibility provides is not a limitation, but a foundation, a stable platform from which you can aim upward towards something transcendent. Without responsibility, there is only chaos. With it, there is order, purpose, and dignity. The act of willingly carrying the load gives you identity, direction, and strength. It transforms suffering into meaning, weakness into maturity, and existence into something bearable. Responsibility doesn't crush you, it shapes you. It tells you who you could become if you stopped running, stood up straight, and decided to bear the weight that life inevitably places on your shoulders. Voluntarily facing chaos transforms you into who you could be. Chaos is the raw material of life, the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncontrollable. It's everything that lies beyond what you understand, beyond the order you've managed to create around yourself. It's the unexpected illness, the loss, the failure, the confrontation with things you don't yet know how to handle. And you can't avoid it. Chaos is always there, waiting at the edges of your existence. The question isn't whether you'll encounter it, but how you'll respond when you do. You can run from it, deny it, pretend it isn't there, or you can face it voluntarily. And it's in that voluntary confrontation that transformation happens. When you choose to face chaos willingly, you're doing something extraordinary. You're saying to yourself and to the world, I won't hide from what's difficult. I'll step forward and see what I'm capable of. That act alone begins to reshape who you are. It moves you from being a passive participant in life to being an active one. You stop waiting for someone else to fix things, and you start to take ownership of your relationship with the unknown. Chaos then becomes your teacher rather than your enemy. Avoiding chaos seems safe in the short term, but it comes with a hidden cost. The parts of yourself that you refuse to confront begin to dominate you unconsciously. The fears you ignore grow in the dark. The weaknesses you avoid become heavier, and the problems you delay become monsters. When you refuse to face the unknown, it doesn't disappear, it grows teeth. It comes back later, larger and more dangerous, demanding your attention at a higher cost. Voluntarily facing chaos, however, reverses that process. It turns what's terrifying into something manageable. You bring light into the dark corners of your life, and in doing so, you expand your competence and your courage. Every time you face chaos, you're engaging in an ancient process, the same pattern you see in myths, stories, and religious narratives throughout history. The hero ventures into the unknown, confronts the dragon, retrieves what was lost, and returns transformed. That pattern isn't fiction, it's a reflection of psychological truth. You are the hero when you decide to step into chaos voluntarily. You're the one who brings order out of the unknown. And the transformation you undergo isn't metaphorical, it's real. You become stronger, more capable, more integrated. This process doesn't happen without fear. In fact, fear is the signal that you're standing at the edge of chaos. It's what tells you that you're about to grow. People think bravery means the absence of fear, but it doesn't. Bravery means facing fear voluntarily. It means walking into the storm knowing you might fail, but doing it anyway. That's what separates growth from stagnation. The person who refuses to act because of fear remains small, dependent, and stuck in familiar patterns. The person who acts despite fear learns something new about themselves and the world. Voluntarily confronting chaos also reveals your potential. You don't know who you could be until you test yourself against difficulty. It's easy to imagine you're capable when life is predictable, but real capability emerges when everything falls apart and you have to rebuild. The process of adaptation, of responding to the unpredictable, draws out hidden strength. It refines your character. You find out that you can endure, that you can think clearly under pressure, that you can act with integrity even when everything is uncertain. That discovery is priceless. It changes your relationship with the world. There's also a moral dimension to this. When you face chaos voluntarily, you contribute to order not just in your own life, but in the lives of others. You become someone reliable, someone others can depend on when things get difficult. And the world needs people like that. When individuals refuse to face chaos, it spills over into everything, families, communities, institutions. But when one person stands up and says, I'll face this, it restores a little bit of order to the world. It's not just personal growth, it's moral responsibility. Chaos is also the source of creativity. Every new idea, every innovation, every leap forward begins in the unknown. When you avoid chaos, you shut yourself off from creation. When you face it, you open the door to possibility. You learn to tolerate uncertainty long enough for something new to emerge. That's where transformation happens, not in the safety of what's familiar, but in the discomfort of what's not yet understood. It's messy and disorienting, but it's also fertile ground for becoming something greater. Voluntarily facing chaos demands humility. You have to admit that you don't know everything, that you're going to make mistakes, that you'll fail and fall short. But humility is not weakness, it's the foundation of learning. It's what allows you to confront the unknown without collapsing into despair. You step into chaos not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to find them. And as you do, you grow in wisdom, resilience, and strength. The transformation that comes from this process is gradual, but unmistakable. You become more disciplined, more capable of handling uncertainty, more aligned with truth. You stop being ruled by fear and start acting from courage. You stop being overwhelmed by change and start using it as a catalyst for growth. Each time you face chaos voluntarily, you move closer to the person you could be, the one who can bring order to the world, not by controlling it, but by mastering themselves within it. Choosing the hard path inspires others and elevates the world. When you decide to take on something difficult, something that demands more of you than comfort or convenience, you're not just changing yourself. You're setting an example that radiates outward. People notice when someone carries their burden with strength, when they face adversity with integrity, when they refuse to collapse under the weight of suffering. That kind of courage awakens something in others. It shows them that strength is possible, that discipline is real. That meaning can be found even in struggle. Human beings are deeply influenced by what they witness, and the sight of one person standing firm in difficulty has a moral force that words alone can't achieve. The act of choosing the hard path carries a moral beauty because it represents voluntary sacrifice. You're not forced into hardship, you choose it for the sake of something greater. That choice is rare, and precisely because it's rare, it's powerful. People instinctively admire it because it reminds them of what they could be. It's a mirror held up to their own potential. Every time you take responsibility, every time you endure what's difficult without bitterness, you're quietly telling others that they can do the same. You're proving that strength and virtue aren't abstract ideals, they're attainable realities. Society is built on individuals who are willing to bear the load. When enough people choose the easy path, civilizations begin to decay, corruption spreads, standards drop, and cynicism replaces hope. But when individuals choose the hard path, when they tell the truth instead of lying, when they work diligently instead of cutting corners, when they sacrifice comfort for principle, the collective moral fabric strengthens. The world doesn't improve through grand revolutions or sweeping ideologies. It improves one responsible action at a time. The smallest act of integrity contributes more to the good of the world than 1,000 empty words about virtue. Choosing the hard path also creates a chain reaction. When you rise above your circumstances, others feel challenged to rise as well. Strength is contagious. When a parent bears their responsibilities with patience, their children learn what maturity looks like. When a leader faces challenges with courage, their followers gain faith. When a friend refuses to compromise their principles, it inspires loyalty and respect. Every act of endurance or sacrifice sends ripples through the lives of those who witness it. The example of one person's courage can alter the trajectory of another's life. There's something archetypal about this process. Human history is filled with figures who chose the hard road, and their courage became a guiding light for generations. We admire them because they embodied the struggle between comfort and meaning, between cowardice and courage. They show us what's possible when a person decides to live by principle rather than expedience. But what we often forget is that this potential isn't limited to great heroes. It exists in everyone. You don't have to be a saint or a revolutionary to elevate the world. You just have to take responsibility for your small corner of it and act with integrity where you stand. The power of example is immense. People may not listen to what you say, but they will see what you do. If your actions align with truth, if you live in a way that embodies courage and discipline, you become a source of orientation in a disoriented world. Others will draw strength from your steadiness, even if they never tell you. They'll remember the way you handled difficulty, the way you spoke honestly, the way you refused to give up. And in their own moments of trial, they'll have that image to guide them. That's how meaning spreads from one person's courageous choice to another's awakening conscience. Choosing the hard path doesn't just elevate others, it elevates the standard of what's possible for humanity. Every time someone chooses courage over fear, discipline over indulgence, truth over deceit, the collective moral ceiling rises a little higher. It reminds everyone that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary endurance and transformation. The world becomes less cynical, less nihilistic, when people see proof that integrity still exists. It's not the grand gestures that save civilization, but the daily acts of responsibility that accumulate quietly, forming the invisible scaffolding of a decent world. And as others begin to follow that example, a kind of moral contagion takes hold. It spreads not through coercion or ideology, but through admiration and imitation. People want to live meaningful lives. They just need to see that it's possible. When they see someone face suffering without bitterness, they realize that life can be endured and redeemed. When they see someone choose the difficult good over the convenient wrong, they feel the pull of conscience within themselves. In that sense, choosing the hard path isn't just a personal decision, it's a form of leadership. The world doesn't change because someone demands it to. It changes when individuals choose to embody what's right despite the cost. Every time you take the hard path, you're participating in that transformation. You're adding a small measure of order to the chaos, a spark of light to the darkness. And those sparks, multiplied across countless lives, are what hold the world together.